Welcome back, everybody. All being well, you've managed to get all the geometry drawn up correctly, that you've checked everything to make sure that it's right. Just go up to measure and just check quickly before you want to create it on the drawing that everything's the right size. It's 100 by 75, that's what it should be. This one here will be 100 by 100. This one here will be 100 by 75. You see the dimensions, it's correct. And this one the same, 75 by 100. So we know that all the geometry is right. You should always check everything at least twice, sometimes 3 times, just to make sure that you've got everything right. Just don't take for granted you've got it right the first time. That's what it's all about, being a draftsperson, is your attention to detail, to make sure that everything's right before you go to the next stage. You might notice that the dimensions that I had on this 3-dimensional model, I have now created another layer that's called model dimensions. I've got another layer that's called just plain dimensions. I'll use that in paper space. I've also created another layer called viewports. So you would have created construction, as I talked yesterday, in geometry and hidden, so that you've got all these appearance here, that you've got this dashed line to show the hidden detail behind this. It tells us that there's something actually behind. We're looking at this face here, which is that, but we can tell there's something behind it, which is this line here, is hidden detail. We can't see it, but it's there. It's detail that's there, but it's hidden from us. So we have a dashed line, and that's called a hidden detail line. So you should have created a layer for that because it's a different line type. And we've got our construction lines, and I've created this one for dimensions. So now the next step that we've got to move on to presenting this on a drawing, which is the natural progression. We are the draftsperson that creates your geometry and given it all the size dimensions it needs. Now it needs to be put on a piece of paper so it can be passed on to the workshop or manufacturing facility that's going to make this particular part. That's what we're doing. We're communicating ideas and designs to people that either want to just inspect the work that we've done, or to go further to people that are going to actually fabricate the part. So this is a universal method of communication. So you notice I've got an A3 layout and an A4 layout. The only difference between the two of them, you can see that obviously it's the size difference, but fundamentally just looking at them, there's really not much difference in appearance, but it's just the title block. You'll see the difference. They zoom into the page. The title block is bigger on this because it's the same size title block, but it's on a different size sheet of paper. So that's how you tell the difference. This dimensionally is exactly the same size on both sheets of paper. So if I click down to that, it's 143 by 32. It mightn't be the exact size that I've got there. But if I measure that, it's still the same size. So the title block is the same on both sheets of paper. It's just that the amount of paper there to put the geometry on is less. Now if we look at this in here, just check this measurement of the overall size of the geometry. It's 349 and it's 225. A sheet of A3 paper is 420 by 297. So we know that geometry that we've created will fit on this sheet of A3 paper at full size. I've already changed everything on the title block. I'll go through that again. You change the annotation on there, the attributes they're called, for each individual item that you bring in. Now we've got a sheet of paper here and we've got model space. We've got our stuff here, our geometry and model space. We've got to somehow be able to look into model space. Say, what's the easiest way? Cut a hole in the piece of paper, basically. That's what we do. So it creates a window. but it's like on a ship, the portholes they've got on the side of the ship so you can see from inside into the outside. We have a viewport, and we just type in to the command bar viewports, and it brings this dialog box up, which is give us a choice of different viewports or styles we can have. I just want to create a single viewport, and once you do, the dialog box goes away. You've just got to draw a rectangle. I might even want a little viewport like that. You've got that choice, or you can make it as big as you like. And then what you've basically done is cut a hole in that piece of paper, and we can see in the model space. Down on this side now, you see we've got paper. It's got model or paper space. Right now we're in paper space. If I click on model space, now we're inside the model space. So this is the hole that we've cut into the piece of paper to be able to see inside of model space. We don't want to have this one on the A3 sheet of paper, so we just zoom it until we can't see that on there. And now further down here, this is the scale, the viewport scale. We know that this will fit full size. So if you click on that arrow, it comes up and gives you a list of different scales. Now this is the important thing when the software is set up on your computer, is if it's picked in the right mode, you will have metric scales here that 1 equals 1 millimeter. If it's been set up the wrong way, you might have, it'll be in feet and inches, it'll be 1 foot equals 3 foot. That's basically 1 to 3, or 1 foot equals 4 foot, but you won't see it in this metric format. And that can get confusing. You've got to work out what the scale is that you're after. Whereas if it's set up in the metric format, it's quite easy. And I know I've just got to click on 1 on 1. If it was in the feet and inches, it'd be 1 foot equals 1 foot. Whereas it's easier, just 1:1. So now we see that doesn't quite fit on that sheet neatly. So we just click on pan. We can move it around so it fits within that viewport neatly. Have it try and make it equal in from each side and equal up from the bottom, just so that it looks neat. And that's up to its presentations, all from the Draftsman. It doesn't come from anywhere else. You see the toolbar's gone because the pan command is in action down here in the command bar. If I press escape, all our tools come back. So now we know we're in model spaces 1 to 1. Click on paper, and now see there's paper zooms in and out. So we're in paper space now. Now that's basically where we want it. You'll notice one thing that I've done, the viewport's red. If I select the viewport, it's on the dimensions layer. I don't want it on the dimensions layer. I want it on the viewports layer. So I just drop that down, change it, and it's on the viewport layer. Our dimensions layer is current. That's why it's on there. If you go to our layer properties, you'll notice that dimensions is the current layer. It's ticked green. If I want a different one, I select that and click the tick button, or I double click on it, it makes it. So it's a couple of different options, but we don't want that the current layer, because then everything we do will be on the hidden layer. It's best if the the layer you're working on at the moment is the one that is current. It stops you from putting things on the wrong layer. And if you ever have any issues with your drawings, things not going the way that you want them to be, a lot of the times it's because you've got things on wrong layers. So what we've got to do now is dimension this drawing. Remember, it's only a 2-dimensional drawing, so we're only going to have length and height on this particular drawing, and we can have this height, and that is the actual width of the block. So this is the width as well. We've got the length there, and we've got the height, which we can't see the height on this one, but we can see it on these three. We can see the width on this one, but we can't see the length on these two. You can see the width and the height, but not the length. This one, you can see the length and the height, but not the width. That's the issue with 2-dimensional drawings. With a 3-dimensional drawing, you will see all dimensions that are on there. But you're not supposed to physically dimension a 3-dimensional drawing. The dimensions only go on 2-dimensional drawings. And dimensions only go in paper space. You don't put dimensions on in model space either. That's the correct protocol. You may see it differently done, but this is the way that the software is designed to be used. So we've got all these different styles of dimension here. You've got linear, aligned, angular, arc length, radius, diameter, ordinate, which is a series of dimensions in a row, and then a jog dimension. So if you've got a really big radius somewhere and it could end up going, the center point, the dimension line will always go from the radius to the center. If the center is really big and comes off the sheet of paper, the dimension line will go off into nowhere. You won't see it because it's not on the paper. This command allows the dimension line to be jogged, so it only shows it on a small part of the paper. It doesn't go to the center. But we don't need to worry about it. All we'll be doing today is the linear dimension. So we select each point we want to dimension it to, bring it down, and that's the dimension. Now, important thing that I want to talk about, as I mentioned in the previous tutorial, go to Options. This is where I said associative dimensioning, that you make new dimensions associative. I'll just untick this for example's sake. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this scale to 1 to 2. Go back to paper space. That dimension stayed where it was. It doesn't go in with it because it's not, this is now smaller than the 100, so it doesn't drop down with it. So I've unticked make new dimensions associative. So what happens now when I dimension that? Oh, that's actually 50 millimeters. That's the size that it is on the piece of paper. As the draftsperson, you know that that's not the correct size. If you do this drawing and send it out to a workshop, the people who make it will actually make it half the size you want it to be. Your customer might have told you, the person that you're doing the drafting for, I want it 100 millimeters long. You do a drawing like this and it gets sent out in the workshop, it'll get made half the size. You would need to be aware of that when you saw it. If you do it and scale it down, and when you go to dimension, oh, that's not the right size, there's something wrong here. The issue being is that the dimension is not associated to the actual model space. So we go back to the options, make new dimensions associative. Now if you had that 150, it only makes new dimensions associative, not old dimensions, only new ones. So now, even though it's scale 1 to 2, it now comes up at the right dimension. Okay, so it's always really, really important that you have that one selected, and so that you have the dimensions associative to what you have done in model space. So I'll scale this one back up again, put it up to full size. Go on model space. I can drag that up, reconnect these dimensions, and it'll be back to where it's meant to be. So that's an important thing to always remember in options. I told you about it in the previous tutorials, but until experiencing the reason why, you would not appreciate the importance of it being right. So now we can just go through and dimension, put every dimension we need, but you only put each dimension on once. This is 75 wide. These two here are 75 wide. You wouldn't put the same dimension, this dimension, on these two as well because you've already done the dimension. You only put a single dimension on the object once. See, now we've got the height, but we wouldn't put the height on both of these as well because we've got it there. So now we've got the length, which is here. We've got the width, which is both of these, and we've got the height, which is on these three here. So we don't need to put those dimensions again, but we need to know the size of this cut. We need to know the size of this one. We would need to know the size of this one. And we would need to know the size of this one. Now you can see that one there. I don't remember doing a dimension 38 millimeters. These ones here I do 25 and 100 and 75. not 38. So what the issue is that in the dimension style, which to be able to bring that up, once again, it's DIM style, dim style. This is the dialog box, dimension style manager. This is the dimension style we're using this particular time. You can modify that, and you see the precision is at 0, so we don't have any trailing decimals. Change that to a 1 trailing decimal, close, and now we've got 37.5. That's the correct measurement. If we left that at 38, the person out in the workshop, this one here, would end up being 36, which wouldn't be right. We wouldn't want it to be that right. Or 37, sorry, that wouldn't be correct. It has to be even. So is there any other dimensions that we need on that? We've got this dimension here that's height. This one here, we wouldn't put this dimension on here because that being 37.5 on the width, and we've got the width here, it's obvious that this one would be 37.5 as well. So you don't put two dimensions on that add up to another dimension. That would be called a closed dimension. If you ever do that, this dimension here has to end up in brackets. Because if these are a little bit wrong, then that dimension won't be right. I won't confuse you too much with that, but that's just a protocol that if you've got a measurement here that's the full size, and this one here, you only put one dimension towards it. If there's 3 or 4 dimensions that add up to that, you would leave one of them off. You could have 3 dimensions, but then the 4th one, which would make it add up to that, you don't put that one on. It's called a closed dimension. So that just about covers everything that we've got here that we need for these. We've got that measurement. We've got that. We've got all these. Anything that you need to make this product is there. So what we'll do now is our 3-dimensional view. Once again, we've got our A4 sheet of paper. We need to put a viewport on it. This time I'll remember to put it on the viewports. Type viewports. Comes up. Enter. Single. Okay. Top corner. We get down to there. And there's our model space again. That's opened up into model space. Now we only want this one. You see how when I zoom right out, because those dots, you can't really see them that clearly, but they're still actually there. This one here, if we go to full size on this one, it's too big for the sheet of paper, so we can't have that one at full size. We'll make it 1:2. Go back into paper space. Now, just as an example, so I can show you, what I'm going to do here, construction, right now some dotted lines, I'm going to make them continuous lines. And you can see how much more it's in your face. And that's why I didn't do it with solid lines, I only did it with dotted lines. You can see how they fill the screen. What we can do with this, so that we don't want to delete, if we go into here, I can actually turn off the construction layer, but then we can't see it anyway. It's not in the drawing, yeah, that's great, but in our model space we can't see. We don't have our construction geometry anymore. We need our construction geometry. If we go back into our sheet, this is another advantage of layers, and we've got it on a layer. If I double click inside the layer, we're in the model space again, what we can do is this tool here, it's freeze or thaw in current viewport. Click on that and it goes off. Go back into paper space. It's still on in model space, but it's not in paper space, and that's why we put things on layers. If we're in this view here, we've still got it. It's there. It's only been turned off in that viewport. It hasn't been turned off in this viewport. But once again, double click inside a model space, and I'm going to freeze that one. And I'm also going to freeze model dimensions. That's why I put it on a separate layer, because we don't want these dimensions in there. We don't dimension 3-dimensional views. So I'm going to freeze that one. There it is. We've got our 3-dimensional model with no dimensions on it. they're still there in paper space, in model space, sorry. They're still there because we need them to refer to do our geometry, but in our model space, in our paper space, they're not there. This one here, remember we scaled it to 1 to 2, so I changed with our title block. We double click on our title block and it brings up the attribute editor. But we can change these to whichever way we want. The scale is 1 to 2. If we wanted to change that to 1 to 4, just apply and you see how it changes it. But I'll change it back because I know it's 1 to 2. I want it to be correct. It's up to you as the draftsperson to make sure all the information on the title block is correct. You'll change your name, your initials, the scale, the date. Every sheet that we create in AutoCAD, if we had an object that we had to make and it had 30 different parts, you would make each part in this one model space. You wouldn't open up a new file for every part because you can have as many sheets as you want. New layout, just keep putting new layouts so that you have as many sheets that you want. All of them are safe in one file instead of having a folder that's got 30 different files in them. We can create sheet sets in here. Every one, like if we know we're going to have 30 parts, we'd change this every time for sheet 3 of 30 or sheet 25 of 30, whichever it is. We change that, and that's up to the draftsperson to make sure that all the information on the drawing is correct. It's up to you to make sure that all these dimensions are correct, that it's third angle projection like we talked about in the dihedral views. This symbol here typifies third angle projection. You've got to make sure that when you've created your geometry, it is actually third angle projection. I'll change these back to dots so that they don't get too hard to read. That one is continuous. Go to dot. Okay. Now we can see our other geometry in there again, whereas the solid line covered our other geometry as well. So that's another reason why. So we've created these drawings. Now you can have a go. I'll have provided you with these templates. Or you can just, if you don't have a title block, it's just a matter of in page setup on either layout. I'll go into these layouts here. Drop under the AutoCAD sign, you go to print and then page setup. And see how we've already got these two layers here. We're on the layout, you modify it. And this here is the setup that I had. But this is your printer. You pick whichever printer you want. If you're printing the paper, you'll have a printer set up to your network or something that'll have it there. But I'm using Adobe PDF and I've created these here for that. This one here, it doesn't necessarily have a paper size, but these two here I've created to suit paper sizes. This one A3, see how this changes to A3. This one A4 and it changes to A4. You can create layouts to suit you. I've got a plot style here that I've created. The issue with that is what becomes evident when we print these is that you've got to have a print set up so that when you click print, we don't want these to have red dimensions. We want everything to be black and white on the page except maybe your logo and the dialogue in the title block. Go to preview, you'll notice all the dimensions are the same. They're not the colours. It comes out black and white on a sheet of paper. You try and have a white sheet of paper with a yellow dimension or a red dimension, it's really, really hard to read. You're communicating to the fabricators. You've got to communicate in a manner that they can understand. It doesn't cause them any difficulty. Printing with colours makes it really hard, your communication to the fabricator. So it's up to you to make sure that when it prints black and white. And that'll be further tutorials down the line on how to set your computer up your AutoCAD up with a plot style that prints correctly. Okay, have a go at doing these two layouts. You want to have the block on one in 3-dimensional on an A4 sheet of paper, and all your geometry on an A3 sheet of paper with all the dimensions you need but no extra dimensions. See how you go. Have fun.